So, I'd now like to introduce you to Maddie, who will be sharing what Ieuan has been doing for his individual speech task. Now, as I said, our competitors have been working on these tasks for a very long time, and it's very encouraging to see all that they've developed. So over to Maddie to discuss Ieuan's topic for his task.
Good afternoon, everyone. So up first from North Region, we have Ieuan, who is going to be giving us his speech on head injuries and traumatic brain injuries. This is a topic that Ieuan is really passionate about, and I know he's really excited to share that with us all today. So Ieuan, would you like to come to the top? And yes, I hope you enjoy listening. It's very interesting.
Head injuries. You've probably heard of them, but do you know what they are? A head injury is a broad term that describes a vast array of injuries occurring to the scalp, skull, brain, underlying tissue and blood vessels in the head. But I'm going to focus on injuries to the brain and the brain tissue. There are two types of brain injuries, a traumatic brain injury and a non-traumatic acquired brain injury. Around 1.7 million people have a traumatic brain injury every year. A traumatic brain injury, also known as a TBI, is a sudden injury causing damage to the brain. These usually occur when there is a blow, bump, or jolt to the head. Many common scenarios when these can happen is during boxing, fights, rugby tackling, car crashes, and even just heading the ball in football. A non-traumatic acquired brain injury, also known as an ABI, is an injury to the brain not caused by an external force to the head. These usually are caused by illnesses, oxygen deprivations, metabolic disorders, aneurysms, and cardiac arrest. There are two ways a head can get injured: directly or indirectly. A direct head injury, also known as a primary head injury, is an injury to the head at site of impact on the head. These are much more obvious to spot, whereas an indirect head injury would need more observations. Signs of a direct head injury are bruising, swelling of the head, damage to the skin, or fractures to the skull or scalp. An indirect head injury is when the head has been hit and the brain has bounced to the other side of the head, causing that part of the brain to get injured. This can lead to concussion and damage to the brain tissue. Now, how do we treat and manage a brain injury? The ultimate management is hospital care, but this is what you can do as a first aider. If there is a wound, clean it, then apply a dressing. If the casualty is feeling sick, give them something to vomit into. If the casualty is unconscious, do Dr. ABC, which stands for Danger, Response, Airways, Breathing, and Circulation. And if everything is fine except from the casualty's response, put them in the recovery position as they're at risk of being sick. If the casualty is conscious, monitor their consciousness with the AVPU scale. In this, the A stands for alert, the V stands for verbal, the P stands for pain, and the U stands for unresponsive. First, you should check their response to questions and if their eyes stay open. Then check if they can follow simple commands. To check for pain, pinch their earlobe and see if they respond to that. And the last stage is being unresponsive. Next, I'm going to talk about the after effects and recovery of a brain injury. There are two ways to categorize the after effects, one group being the early and the other being the delayed. The early effects cover loss of balance, nausea, persistent neck pain, ringing in the ears, and sensitivity to light and or sound. The delayed effects cover blurred vision, loss of balance, difficulty concentrating, depression, fatigue, personality change, and memory loss. The recovery can involve learning basic things again, such as feeding, walking, reading, writing, and speaking. Just to give you a personal view, I once suffered from a head injury. I was doing judo when I was thrown across the room many times and ended up with a concussion. I had to be taken to hospital for observations, but I didn't need a head scan because it was classed as a minor head injury. My symptoms were vomiting, fatigue, lack of concentration, and incoherence. My symptoms lasted a few months. My recovery also lasted a few months, and in this, I had to rebuild my stamina. Because of the fatigue, I struggled to keep mobile and walk for short periods of time. To conclude, a head injury is an injury to the head and or brain. The symptoms are fatigue, vomiting, lack of balance, blurred vision, and memory loss. You now know the meaning of a head injury, the symptoms, and how to treat one. And from my own experience, you can see that even a mild injury can have a long recovery.
Thank you, Ieuan. Thank you, Ieuan, for that wonderful insight into head injuries. Head injuries aren't actually something I'm that familiar with or have treated that many times, so I will definitely carry some of that new knowledge forward.